From the legendary studios at Staten Island, CTV, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another sports extravaganza. I'm Mike Pinto, alongside my co-host and brother, Anthony Pinto. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Mike. I think the crowd has settled in.
Another standing ovation.
Yes. I love that opening graphic with LSU and the boys. And, you know, Mike, while most people are thinking impeachment, those guys are thinking Peach Bowl.
Oh, you pulled that one out. You know what? Let's paint the picture if we can. We showed that opening graphic Saturday, December 7th in Atlanta. LSU, Joe Burrow, we saw him, right?
Great story.
And a great story, and they dominated Georgia.
They did.
Okay, in the SEC championship, 37-10. It was wreckage. I mean, it was just a blowout, and Georgia, up to that point, was very stingy with giving up points. So I guess what we could say is, who'd have thunk it? Because at that point...
Well, at that point, you kind of got expected to it, but not at the beginning of the season.
But it catapults them in the rankings to number one.
Yeah.
And when we say, who'd have thunk it? Well, guess what? We have two guests that thunk it. Right. We have one on our phone lines. Let's start with welcoming in Tim Olsen, calling in from Louisiana. Tim, here we go. With us, Tim?
Thank you for having me, Mike. Anthony, I appreciate it.
Hey, welcome, Tim. Congratulations, and let's, at the same time, let's welcome in, we're going to call you our LSU Insider. Yeah. You're an alum of LSU, and by extension, we have another LSU Insider, your dad.
Once removed.
Yeah.
Alan Olsen. Alan, thanks
Mike,
for coming down
thank
tonight.
you.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks.
There we go. So there you have. So it was such an exciting college year. Anthony, we know that you really enjoyed a college game, and this was something that was just, again, out of the blue or out of the purple, however you want to say it.
Yeah, I just want to tell Tim the story. We usually do a college preview, at the beginning of, and we have another insider, Jimmy DeLauro, that always comes on, and it was obvious, with Alabama and Clemson, and we were looking for dark horses. And I actually said on the show, I said, I really want to pick LSU, but they don't have a quarterback. So I'm eating those words.
Yeah.
You know what? What we can do, and if we can, and the perfect segue, what we'll do is, we'll go over to G3, and we're going to call this, Borough of Manhattan, because there you have it. And Tim, we have a beautiful picture of the Heisman ceremony in Manhattan. And just tell us what thoughts were going through your mind when you saw Joe Burrow receive the Heisman Award, and it was historic. And you could probably fill our viewers in why it was historic voting.
Absolutely, Mike. I mean, it was such an exciting feeling for LSU fans because there's been, we've had so many expectations at the beginning of the season, the past couple of years, and there was always a level of excitement, with the amount of talent LSU would bring in, top 5 recruiting classes year in and year out. And preseason, we would say, X player might be, a serious Heisman contender. Defensive players typically don't win the Heisman, so, offensively, we would look to our running backs because they put up good numbers. We never really thought we had a quarterback that could get the job done, simply because the offense and the scheme that we ran was more conducive to running the ball. So when we finally had a quarterback in the mold of Joe Burrow, at least last year, we thought there was a lot of potential. But certainly this year, it was almost a complete surprise for many people. I mean, we thought he had a ton of potential. We thought he would be, that senior-type leader that would come in and take control of the offense. Maybe not to this extent. I think people are still skeptical that the offense and the game plan would actually change because, we've been a bit hard-headed and the offensive game plan hasn't really changed. We've run the same scheme for so many years. So to see us come out, under Steve Ensminger and Joe Brady and really change up the offensive game plan, throw the ball a lot, use a lot of slants, downfield passing, and look a little bit different than really LSU has ever looked and had the most prolific offense in SEC history, was really, really exciting, and it was absolutely great to see Joe Burrow a true class act and great ambassador for college football to win the Heisman.
Wow.
Well said.
Well said. And we'll put your dad on the spot. We'll make him work a little bit over here, too, because it was interesting. And as we mentioned, it was historic because Burrow received 2,608 points, but he had the most first-place votes all time, ever, 90.7% of first-place votes. And it was also the first time in 60 years that someone from LSU won the Heisman. Now, Tim, I know you know this, but we're going to put your dad on the spot. 60 years ago, who won the Heisman for LSU?
Billy Cannon.
Wow.
Can't stump him.
You can't stump him. Unbelievable. It's like a story. Right? What we're going to do is we're going to go over to the next graphic, and I call this, Tim, not your average Joes. We spoke about Joe Burrow, but there's another Joe, maybe a little bit more behind the scenes for the average person, but as an insider, you know the story of Joe Brady all too well. Tell us about it, if you will.
Yeah, Joe Brady, he is considered to be kind of the brightest young offensive mind in football, really. And so he actually initially got his start at William & Mary. He was a player there, coached linebackers, actually. He was on the defensive side of the ball when he started his coaching career. And then went over to Penn State for a couple of years under James Franklin, and actually coached as a graduate assistant under James Franklin and Joe Moorhead, who's now the head coach of Mississippi State. So he learned under some really good offensive minds and then went to the NFL as an offensive analyst or assistant with the Saints. And so a lot of Louisiana football fans really knew him pretty well when he was with the Saints because, he studied under Sean Payton and Pete Carmichael, and he was considered to be kind of a rising star. And Coach Joe at LSU made a play to get him. He came over with a little bit of fanfare. I think, he was going to take the role of passing game coordinator. And really from week one, with that first game at Texas this season, it was pretty clear that he had control of the offense. He has a really good working relationship with our offensive coordinator, Steve Ensminger. So I think they complement each other really well. But he's somebody who's certainly considered to be rising up the offensive coaching ranks. And, he may have, a payday coming that rivals any other assistant in college football. So having won the Broyles Award for top assistant in college football, he's certainly worth the money.
Again, way to break it down for us. Thank you for that. We're going to bounce over to our next graphic, turn it over to your dad. Coach O, Erjuan, tell us, if you can, Alan, you were very high on him from the beginning. Maybe some weren't, but what did you see in him?
Well, I think the fact that he's a Louisiana native, he loves the state of Louisiana, and he loves his players like they're his son. And when he came to LSU, he hired guys, that would help him get to where he wants to be. And last year, a couple of years there, that was last year, the year before, he said, we got to stop being a brick and mortar team like Tim alluded to. We got to get moving, throwing the ball. So he went and hired, Joe Brady. And the one thing this year is different is that the receivers caught the ball. Previous years, they were dropping if they catching almost 80% of the passes. If you got a good passing attack, you're gonna win some games.
That's a great point. I remember you pointing that out early in the season. And then as I'm watching these games, I see where Alan's going with this. Where we're going with this is to the next graphic. Anthony, I have to ask you a question because we're going to put up the final rankings. Here we go. I don't know if you could, viewers at home could see it. And really, when you look at the rankings, you say if we blocked out number 1 in the country and number 13 in the country, you probably say, well, yeah, before the season started, you say that looks about right, except, you would probably have
Flip-flop, right?
Flip-flop then, right?
Yeah, that's what I was telling you, Tim. We're having trouble. It's going to be another year of, Alabama, Clemson. I can't take it anymore.
I know. Groundhog Day.
So this is refreshing.
Tim, and then we're going to go over to our next graphic if we can, because obviously it brings us to the Final Four. But Tim, just quickly, just a quick aside. What gave you more of a thrill? Beating Alabama in Tuscaloosa when things were a little bit more up in the air as to where you were, or actually winning the SEC game, against Georgia? Which gave you the more, greater satisfaction?
I think it if any other LSU fan, heard me say otherwise, they would definitely have a bone to pick with me. I would absolutely say the Alabama win, simply because we had lost the past 8 meetings. I was at the national championship game in 2011 in New Orleans in the Superdome that we lost in a very disappointing fashion. Got shut out, barely crossed the 50-yard line, and that started this current losing streak. So to see us actually go on the road in Tuscaloosa, we knew we had a good team. We knew Joe Burrow would be confident going in there, and certainly change the offense, the offensive mindset that we've had in years past, and we could actually put up points. It was just amazing feeling finally beating those guys on the road, and really starting to them down the path and knocking them out of the playoff picture as well. So that was also very satisfying for LSU fans.
That's what we were thinking. So what we're going to do is we'll go over to G8, because we showed a quick graphic of the Final Four: LSU, Ohio State, Clemson, and Oklahoma. LSU matched up with Oklahoma on G8. Anthony, roll up your sleeves. Let's drill down a little bit. Let's take a look at this game.
Yeah, well, first of all, Tim, I mean, that was key to be voted number 1, so you avoid Clemson in the semifinal game. So that was important.
Yeah, and I thought the really interesting part about that was, a lot of LSU fans didn't think that we would be able to jump Ohio State, just given how the media was talking leading up to the final rankings. And I thought the most telling part about how highly Clemson is thought of was when they finally announced that LSU was number 1, which meant that given that they showed that Ohio State would be playing Clemson, Ryan Day, the head coach at Ohio State, and his players, they just had this completely shocked look in their face, like, what have we gotten ourselves into? Did this really happen? So I thought that was really interesting. I think both games will be amazing games, but I'm certainly happy to have that number 1 ranking.
Right, and so if you look at this game, so I think the early point spread has LSU like a 13-point favorite. But I wouldn't get too complacent. I mean, Oklahoma could really score. I mean, they have a little trouble on defense. They're ranked, I think, number 50 in D. But they could really, light it up. And the one thing I was reading, I want to get your comment on, if there is a problem with LSU defensively, I was reading that the LSU's front 7 had problems with mobile quarterbacks this year. And we know, so Jalen Hurts has about 1,200 rushing yards this year. You see that as a possible problem?
It is a little concerning, and just given Jalen Hurts' history, having beaten LSU when he was at Alabama, so he has a bit of a history there, both sides. The game that LSU had against Ole Miss, where John Reese Plumlee just ran wild on the Tigers, didn't sit well with many fans. But I think in the course of the last 2 games of the season, between Georgia and Texas A&M, defensively, Dave Aranda made a lot of adjustments scheme-wise, but I think he was able to rotate players in and out in the defensive line, keep some of the players fresh, bring some younger guys in within the linebacking core, kind of these hybrid safety linebackers that they've been using, like Jacoby Stevens and others, where those guys were a bit fresher later in the game, and they were able to stop some of the more mobile quarterbacks kind of late in the season. So I think that bodes well going into the playoff, but Hurts certainly is a step above anybody they've played this season.
Yeah. Tim, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you going into that game?
I would say I'm probably about an 8 or a 9. It's hard to bet against Joe Burrow, and I feel like we're almost too confident, where a lot of our fans think that there's almost nothing that can stop us. But I also think that's a good mentality to have. And my dad pointed out about Coach O, he's instilling that mentality in the team, where we want to be the team that other teams fear. For the longest time, LSU has feared Alabama, even though they haven't acted like it. There's been that deeper fear, like, oh, this is the same thing over and over again. We're going to lose for another time. It's going to be 7 in a row, 8 in a row. And I think Dabo Swinney's kind of done that with his team at Clemson. So I think now Coach O is instilling that same mentality, which should help us in this game.
Alan, scale of 1 to 10, how confident?
I say about a 7.
Okay, 7. All right. So, all right.
Yeah.
And as my brother pointed out, and especially in a bowl game, anything could happen. But just as you said, the spread says that they're
with those suspensions, they lost their number 1 pass rusher, Oklahoma. So that's going to hurt
Yes,
them.
and I
also.
think the other element there too is on the LSU side, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, of course, the outstanding running back. He actually suffered a hamstring injury in practice.
Wow.
The extent of which isn't 100% known just yet, but the rumor is currently that he actually may be out for this game.
Wow.
So we might have to have a running back by committee, which would certainly be a big blow and would actually maybe serve to equalize it a bit more now that Oklahoma has players out as well.
Tim, I got to ask you something. I read something that really had my jaw dropping. I read something that said that they considered Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson possibly better than OBJ and Landry. Could that possibly be?
Honestly, it was really tough to say because, Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry were able to play with Zach Mettenberger for a season or two. So they certainly had exposure to a better quarterback than LSU was used to at the time. But having a quarterback like Joe Burrow, more importantly, also having the receiving talent to be able to throw to, it's hard to argue against Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry, but Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, I mean, those guys are on another level compared to any other college talent right now. So the sky's the limit with those two.
Send them to the Jets.
That's right. Yeah, we could use a couple of them.
One's available.
Jeff. All right, so what we'll do is let's take a very interesting game, G9, Ohio State, Clemson. Boy, oh boy.
That could be a championship game.
Tim, what do you say?
I've gone back and forth a bunch on that one. I think Ohio State has all of the talent in the world, both on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. I just think with Dabo Swinney in his history and Trevor Lawrence doing what he did last year in an outstanding running game, and really the number one defense in the country statistically in terms of points given up, top 5 in total yards given up. It's hard to go against Clemson. So I think Clemson ekes out a close win.
Anthony, what do you see in that game?
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, that could be a championship game, any other year. That's a real coin flip game. I think you're spot on the way you broke it down. Just the fact that they've been there before. Trevor Lawrence, maybe the more experienced quarterback in the playoffs. I'd give the slight lean to Clemson.
Alan, how do you weigh in?
I think Clemson. I think Ohio State's played in the Big Ten this year, and some of the they've had a lot of blowouts. But some people might say that Clemson hasn't played anybody, but in the recent games they've had a lot of the other opposition hasn't gotten many points out of them. But just because of the quarterback and the coach, I have to agree that Clemson's should take Ohio State. So.
I wanted to ask you, just so from an LSU perspective, Tim, would there be one that would be, would LSU would be better off playing, either Ohio State or Clemson, from a matchup perspective?
I think both Ohio State and Clemson, both would be, I'd say almost equally as tough as each other in that sense, but. I think a lot of people are certainly worried about Clemson, and rightfully so. But if you look at what Ohio State brings to the table as well, just on how complete they are on both sides of the ball, I think they also present a little bit of risk in that sense. But I would certainly give the edge on the coaching side as well, and the experience factor to Clemson. I've been a big fan of Brent Venables, the defensive coordinator at Clemson for a very long time. He's certainly probably the best defensive coordinator in the business. Him and Aranda, I think, are certainly up there. So I give the edge there to Clemson. But I think, again, both teams are just going to be – it's going to be a heck of a game, and I think either team will be very difficult for LSU to match up against.
And, Tim, one more key. Isn't the championship game played in New Orleans?
It just seems like LSU lucked out just to play their championship games in New Orleans. We're 2 out of 3. For the past 3 that we've played. So hopefully they can bring another title home in front of the home crowd.
Well, just as my brother said, January 13th at the Mercedes-Benz Superdome in Louisiana. Tim, on a personal level, we want to thank you for calling in, and we've been doing the show now. We're going on 12 years, all the way back in 2008. We had you on as a guest, and to show you how time has gone by, We're going to go over to our next graphic, if we can. And you're an author. You wrote a book. And at the time you were a teenage investor. It was a beautifully written book. It was a bestseller. And it's not surprising to us, Tim, the success that you've become. And I work with your dad every day, and I couldn't say how proud your parents are of you, and rightfully so. You go to LSU. You wrote your ticket. You were a bright enough young man. You could have went to any university in the country. You chose LSU because you're sports minded, and you thought that that campus field with they were excellent at baseball, and we'll get to that in a minute, and basketball and football. So you go down and you're a standout scholastically. Shell Oil sees a rising star. They hire you. You're an analyst for Shell Oil, and really, we all couldn't be more proud of you. And now, to show you that time has gone by, we'll go over to our next picture, if we can. And now you're a dad. We have your lovely wife, Lindsay, and your beautiful baby, Leighton. And I can't tell you how many times Alan pulls out his wallet and his cell phone to show us pictures of Leighton, a proud grandfather, and rightfully so.
No, Mike, I really appreciate that. It's been wonderful coming on the show. I haven't had, I owe everything that I have and all of what I've done to, how my parents raised me. My mom and dad are just such amazing people, and I'm pretty much down here in Louisiana, but I talk to them every day, and I have no better friend or mentor in the world than my dad. He has been an outstanding role model for me, and it's just great talking to him daily about LSU sports, the Yankees during the season. So we always have something to talk to. I know he's such a proud grandpa. Leighton loves him. Lindsay and I love him. And it's just, I really appreciate you letting me come on the show and continue to talk sports with you guys. Leighton is certainly being raised as an LSU Tiger fan, as a Yankee fan. She's been in her Yankee onesie already multiple times this season, and she's been in her LSU little cheerleading dress. So we're very excited about raising her a sports fan.
Love it. And what we're going to do is we'll go over to our next graphic. You mentioned your parents. We have a beautiful picture of your parents holding, hey, look, Alan, you got your Yankee jersey on there, holding Leighton, and your beautiful wife, Diane. And that's really, really beautiful. And since this is the Christmas season, what we want to do is we want to, Tim, we want to thank you again for calling in. We have a gift for you. But you're going to have to come back to New Jersey to get it. This is it's an interesting bottle for when Tim comes back.
He may come back in January, right?
Something to open and to celebrate.
Very nice.
Together with your family. So
thank you.
Make sure you hold that. For Tim.
I will.
So Merry Christmas to you, Tim, and your father gets a gift too, but before he gets it, he's going to have to answer a question. He's going to have to sing for his supper, so to speak. All right. So here's the question. We're going to stay with the LSU theme, and we're going to ask your dad, on the Yankee current roster, there's a star on the Yankee roster that played his college ball at LSU. Can you name that Yankee standout?
DJ LeMahieu. And he also...
Go ahead.
Oh, wow.
There we go. Go ahead. You go finish your thought.
He also played in the College World Series against Garrett Cole when he played for UCLA.
Wow. Tim, we're going to fact check. You can fact check him. And who was his teammate? Was he on the same team as Bregman, Tim?
No, they were actually a couple years apart. DJ LeMahieu was drafted in 2009, and then Bregman was drafted in 2016. So they were a couple years apart. Bregman came out of high school in New Mexico, kind of Gatorade Player of the Year, National Player of the Year, and a lot of people didn't expect him to sign with LSU, but both of those guys have had incredible Major League careers. So they're certainly doing Tiger Nation proud.
Well, your dad got the answer correct, so we're going to be giving him a beautiful sweatshirt from my brother and I. It's
nice.
a hoodie, but it's from the Yogi Berra Museum and Learning Center.
Oh, very
And
nice. Thank
when
you.
you purchase something there, which we did, it's nice to know that the money goes, because it's a learning center to underprivileged people, youngsters that buying
cause,
books
yep.
and things of that nature. So it's a yogi.
Oh, I love it. And an 8. Look at that 8
That's
there.
it. That's right.
8 for the.
So we can't thank you enough, both of you, for coming on the show. You're like family, and it's good to have you on the Christmas episode. So Tim, thank you for calling in. And
I hope Santa brings you two
Thank
more
you so much.
victories.
right,
Two more victories.
especially
Right.
on January 13th.
Maybe the first one will be the first one will be great because my family will be here as well, so I'll be
Great.
watching.
That's right.
Enjoy it.
On your.
That-
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Thank you, Tim. Okay.
To you.
Take care, Tim.
Alan, it was what he said about you. I don't think,
Yeah.
as a dad, I don't think it gets much better
Oh, thanks.
for him to say that about you.
That's very
And,
nice.
And again, with us being business associates for all of these years, it's true.
Well, it's very hard. It's in this day and age to have kids who turn out right. I mean,
You're not kidding.
there's a lot to be said for being close with your family and to be there, like to have dinner with them, and not to have them shy away from things, and to be a
He's-
family unit. That's
He's
important.
really special. He
Yeah.
really is. Your daughter Kim also, and you and Diane have so much to be proud of. So we can't thank you for coming
Thank
down.
you very much.
Enough.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Merry
Anthony.
Christmas to you
Merry
and
Christmas
you and
to
the
you.
family.